r/ask Reddit. What were the facts you learned in school that are no longer true? You're not gonna have a calculator everywhere you go. 80,085. That on the other hand, still holds good. The food pyramid. So I'm not supposed to eat 700,000 calories a day? Edit. Okay guys, I meant kilocalories. I didn't even know that was a thing. Seriously, I could never wrap my head around that. 45-56 servings of bread a day? Duck's sake. I didn't learn this in school, but I heard it often repeated on things like the Discovery Channel and Animal Planet when I was a kid. I always heard that the Komodo dragon, the largest living lizard on Earth, was such a successful predator because its mouth was so filthy and septic that the microbes in the saliva would cause fatal infections on its prey. The dragon would track the wounded animal until it eventually collapsed and would eat it. This, as it turns out, is not true, or at the very least not the whole story. It takes days for microbial infections to begin to show symptoms in an animal as large as, say, a water buffalo. But animals were collapsing hours after being bitten, not days. Microbial infections from their saliva couldn't explain how rapidly these large mammals were being killed. This lie was repeated throughout my childhood, and I even heard it repeated at the San Diego Zoo as recently as last year. As it turns out, Komodo dragons are able to hunt so successfully because their saliva contains venom that they produce from their venom glands. I thought that until this very moment. I never felt so betrayed as when I learned it. Apparently they didn't even know about the venom glands until 2009, with some evidence of venomous proteins only going back to 2005. The Great Wall of China is the only man-made structure visible from space. But space is visible from the Great Wall of China. I never understood why people said this. It doesn't make any sense, because the wall is not wide, just long. The tongue has different taste zones. Oh, I remember that. I tried that myself many times. I was never able to replicate the experiment. Could not imagine back then that there was any chance that information written in a book could be wrong. So I concluded that my tongue is broken, or I don't know how to experiment. Maybe if you'd tried tasting something other than penis you'd have got better data? Thanks filthy stranger E2. Multiple golds, you mad bastards. Pluto was a planet when I was at school. Of course, Jerry. It's a cold celestial dwarf. When I was a kid we were taught that penguins' feet didn't freeze because of their circulation. Turns out they have antifreeze proteins in their blood that bind to ice crystals and stop them from growing, so their blood stays liquid well below 0 degrees. Source: worked at a university research center with a guy that did his PhD in antifreeze proteins. Edit: proteins, not enzymes. Sorry, biochemistry. Does this mean I can put penguin blood in my car? Do it and tell us the results. You have to learn in cursive writing. Higher schooling will not accept anything that isn't cursive. Yes, I remember teachers racing students in handwriting. Teachers would write the alphabet as cursive and students would do it in print. This was the only argument they used as to why cursive was better. Then high school came and no one wrote in cursive and everything we handed in had to be typed. Joke's on them. I combine cursive and print when I write. Sometimes even I can't read what I wrote. There is a country called Czechoslovakia. This will always remain stuck in my head till the day I die, and yet so much of it is out of date. Edit: yeah, I am aware that some of it is straight up wrong. They played a bit fast and loose to get the song to fit the tune. My point was more that a number of valid mentions it makes are out of date and it misses a number of new countries. Also, it's a damn catchy tune, so there's that. I don't even have to click that. I know that's Yakko Warner singing the country's song. That two blue-eyed parents can't have a brown-eyed child. Apparently not only is this pure bullshit, the genetics of eye color is more complex than that. It led to a lot of kids being rejected by their real fathers before DNA testing became available. My son was taught that you had to have the same blood type as one of your parents. He told his teacher that his dad is O+, I'm A+, and yet he's O, and the teacher gave him a funny look and told him that maybe we should have a talk. He came home in a panic and asked if he was the result of an affair. I was so pissed. Of course I had to be sarcastic about it. You figured it out. Dad cheated on me and got pregnant, which is the only way this could happen because you look just freaking like him. He calmed down, did a bit of research, then apologized. Sounds to me like his teacher is the one who owed you an apology. Teachers deserve a hell of a lot of latitude when it comes to matching up their education with what parents want. But insinuating that a kid might be the result of extramarital activities is pretty ducking inappropriate. I was taught in grade school that we had to know the metric system because the United States was going to adopt it like any day now. For sure, that was about 30 years ago. The US is moving towards the metric system, inch by inch. I mean, the US government passed the Metric Conversion Act in 1975 that officially made the metric system the preferred way to measure things. The change just hasn't been happening in everyday life. Christopher Columbus was the first dude to discover America and tried to bargain with the Indians but couldn't work it out because of cultural differences. In grade school during the 70s, we were also taught that he sailed west to prove the world was round. We were taught that in the 2000s as well. What a load of crap. You're born with a set number of brain cells and that number can only diminish throughout your life. Anti-alcohol, I remember a version of that. I don't know how much common is it, but if the earth were 1 centimeter closer to the sun, we would be burned. 1 centimeter further from the sun we would be frozen thing. No, we wouldn't. The distance is changing all the time. During a year. No one better jump than S. Forget jumping. If you're a couple of inches shorter or taller than your friend, at least one of you is ducked. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. No, just a slogan paid for by Kellogg's. Edit. To be clear, I don't think you should skip breakfast or that breakfast is unimportant. To think that would be just stupid. However, it should be known that this was a paid slogan to sell breakfast foods, not based on any facts at the time. It's probably best to eat 6-8 small meals of a variety of types and sources, none of them being particularly important, but important as a whole. Edit. Fixed auto-corrected word. What? Also, John Harvey Kellogg invented cornflakes because he believed that eating bland food would stop people from masturbating. That fat is the biggest cause of heart disease. Sugar companies paid off scientists to focus the blame off sugar and push it onto fat. Edit. I'm not saying go out and eat bacon, sausage, and steak for every meal. I'm not saying you can never eat sugar. I'm just saying we used to demonize all fats, saying they led to heart disease when we know now there are good heart healthy fats. We also went through a period where reduced fat foods were considered healthier even though they had extra sugar to compensate for the lack of taste. I'm not your dietitian nor your cardiologist. I'm just noting there seems to be a shift in the tide on our views of sugars and fats. Oh right, I remember that. We were always cooking things on pig fat. Then they came with animal fat is unhealthy. We half ignored that as a family. Some years later actually vegetable oil is worse than pig fat. Go figure. Basically the exact concept behind all low fat or zero fat foods that are all over the place. The PPL are slowly starting to realize that fat isn't bad for you but rather sugar is the main issue. In psychology class we learned about the bystander effect and the Kitty Genovese story where apparently she was raped and killed. She cried for help but her neighbors in the building apparently assumed someone else was going to help her. Turns out the story was embellished by a reporter so that it sounded like no one did help her but her neighbors actually helped and she died on the way to the hospital. The bystander effect is still a thing, right? Only the example doesn't hold up. Actually, the story was embellished by the police because several neighbors said they did call the police and no one responded. So the police defended themselves with an aggressive no one called the police media push, which was picked up in a big way by the New York Times. But the good news is that the aggressive media coverage of this story and resulting public outrage helped lead to the establishment of the nationwide 911 emergency phone system. There are 5 senses. I actually am getting my PhD in neural engineering. And it blew my mind when I started learning of all the other ones. Now, it totally bugs me that we were ever taught it. Strictly speaking, there are dozens of senses. Dozens. Which led to multiple perceptions of being. I think the general subject is quite complicated though, and probably prudent to hold off trying to distinguish the two to children. Edit. I can't believe how much this has blown up. The biggest reason I love the Reddit community is for its curiosity. Seriously, stop apologizing for asking questions. Instead, be proud of your questions. As a scientist, I am 100% dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge. So you don't need to apologize for stupid questions before you ask. There's no such thing. Could you try to list them? From most important to least preferably? Most tyrannosaurs were completely feathered and their posture was really long and sprinty. At least that is what we can believe now after more study. At the time I was to believe that they were like upright iguanas with big teeth. Edit. I don't want to reply to all 70 or so of you. I said tyrannosaurs but T-Rex was the obvious notable exception. There were other tyrannosaurs besides Rex. And we can believe the giant chicken theory right up until someone discovers more evidence that shows they were actually covered in razor wire and had biomechanical implants. They were actually covered in razor wire and had biomechanical implants, just the ones we'll dig up after WW4. Pluto is the 9th and last planet in the solar system. The atom is indivisible. I will be successful if I get an A in every class. They first split the atom in 1917. Apparently, my school only heard about it in 2004. My early teachers always said that the Pilgrims and the Indians got along and had a happy Thanksgiving. All was joyous. But when I got to 4th grade, my teacher basically said everything you know about Thanksgiving is a lie, and sadly we learned the truth. At least you were taught that in grade 4. My grade 12 Canadian history class still taught that when the settlers came everything was joyous, and the fur trade was a turn of the century operation. Took an Aboriginal studies class in university and I was in shock. One of my favorite high school teachers either couldn't at the time or failed to even address the real reason behind reserves. You only lose 2 teaspoons of blood during a period. Bullshit. Yes, I was taught this in nursing school. Boy was I surprised when I started using a menstrual cup. One of the reasons I started using a menstrual cup was because my doctor wouldn't believe me when I said I bled so much. I wanted to be able to quantify it. It turns out I was losing anywhere from 200 milliliters to 300 milliliters of blood per period. That is only counting cups I completely fill, not the partially filled ones or the overflow amount I'll lose directly into the toilet or leaked out onto the pad. You're only allowed to use one source from the internet in your paper. The rest needs to come from books. And God forbid someone else beat you to that book you needed. You might not see it for 2 weeks. I before E, except after C. But I have weird beige neighbors. The full phrase is I before E, except after C, or when sounded like I as in neighbor and way, but yet, weird is weird. In Norway we learned that the US had 52 states Kosovo Bokprintengera. There are 52 states when you include the Jukas. Bokprintengera, please tell me this was on purpose. In 3rd grade I was taught that Antarctica was the 2nd largest continent, because it looked that way on a map. I honestly don't know if my teacher actually believed that or if she was just ducking with us. That lemmings don't actually follow each other robotically, even to the point they'll walk off cliffs to their deaths. This fact was actually staged for a Walt Disney documentary back in the 60s or so. I was taught our 16th president was Jefferson Davis and that it wasn't a civil war, because a civil war isn't between 2 separate countries. This was in 5th grade in Alabama. Edit. I believe it was the individual teacher who toughed this, not the school system. However, the school community did have a few traditions honoring the Confederacy. Examples include local hotel on Mobile Bay firing a Confederate cannon into the bay once a week for the fallen Union Confederate soldiers who died at the bay while dressed in gray, and a handful of memorials. That doesn't make sense. Much like Alabama, if Jefferson Davis was a president, he was the first president of the Confederacy, not the 17th president of the US. Make up your mind. It was either one country or two. High school, no one will accept work cited from Google. College, no one will accept work cited from Wikipedia. Boss, I dunno. Just Google Wiki YouTube that shit. Edit. All the people focusing on the citation aspect of this post. Any boss that says just Google that shit obviously is not looking for the cure to cancer. This post was about the legitimacy of the tools available to do research. Okay, citing Google is like citing a library. You might as well say that you got the information from Earth. At least cite the website that Google got you to. Drink 8 glasses of water a day. Yeah, I remember this. Ever since I started drinking 8 glasses of whiskey instead, everything has been a lot better. Really. When I was in kindergarten, we sat in a circle and one at a time we'd enter the circle and act like our favorite animal and the others had to guess what we were. My favorite animal was a cheetah, so I crawled swiftly across the floor. No one could guess it. So after a few minutes and repeated all 4 sprints, my teacher, who wasn't very nice to me, said, "I noticed you're moving very fast. A leopard?" To which I replied, "No, a cheetah is the fastest." She insisted she was right and I was wrong and never corrected herself. 2 years later I had her as a teacher again, because we had a very large 2nd grade class, and after some unrelated trouble my parents confronted her with this story at a parent-teacher conference. She denied it and insisted we agree on that. This taught me everything I'd ever need to know about facts and authority figures. My 8th grade biology teacher told us that only identical twins were possible and that there was no scientific possibility for identical triplets, twins, etc. Imagine my surprise many years later when I discovered this was a blatant lie. I'm still confused as to how she could have possibly believed that, but then I remember that was before the internet. The rainforest, at current rate of consumption, will be gone by 1996. Edit. This was in my middle school books, and I was in middle school in 2003. This is not a political goddamn lefties and their scare tactic money grabbing global warming hoo-ha statement. More I wish my middle school replaced their science books more than once per decade. Negative numbers. For 4 years of elementary school I'm told that you can't subtract 8 from 7 and so the problem is unsolvable. In 5th grade the answer is suddenly -1. Why wait 5 years to reveal that? Can students under 5th grade not handle the concept of negative numbers? I hated math after that and wondered what else would just suddenly be changed on me. That there are only 3 states of matter: California, New York, and Texas. Edit. I'm an idiot. I misread what he said. Polar bears stayed warm because their fur was fiber optic and absorbed heat from the sun. So if enough polar bears stood next to each other I'd finally have fast fiber internet. Phi bear. That glass is a liquid. This is apparently not true, but I believed it for a long time because things that I learned as a child somehow stick around as truths way more easily in my mind. Edit. Apparently it is sort of true anyway, as I have understood. Most consider glass to be somewhere between a solid and a liquid fluid. Amorphous solid is the term I learned today. Semicolon. It does not have the crystal structure of a solid, but, when cooled down, it is practically a solid as it does not flow. The old windows that are thicker at the bottom are not caused by the flowing of glass, but it is simply the way they were produced that causes this. Today I learned. Another edit. Comments don't fully agree on all the details. It's an interesting subject. Most seem to assure me that it is solid. And yes, I do realize that any substance can be liquid, solid or gas, etc. depending on temperature. That I will use all of my math knowledge in my job doing the calculation by hand and without a calculator. Mechanical engineer and found out they have programs to do the calculations for you so you cannot spend all your time doing long division. Columbus was a good person. You need to learn how to do long form math. You won't have a calculator with you all of the time, which I type into my little handheld supercomputer. A bit beside the point, but one teacher asked what color the hair of Iceber's polar bear is. Everyone answered white, except for me saying it was transparent. The teacher said that that was the stupidest thing she had ever heard and put that off. Not the first time I knew better and got shut off by some stupid teacher. Edit. To clear up some confusion going on here, I called it iceberg. The correct term is polar bear. Sorry that some of you have to get so mad for using a wrong term. Thanks though to all the people enjoying the word iceberg. Edit 2. A polar bear's coat has 2 layers of hair, an outer layer, made up of long, 5-15 cm, guard hairs, and a thick undercoat, made up of shorter hair. These guard hairs are mostly transparent or clear, but thanks to some special characteristics that work to create cool optical tricks, these hairs appear white. http://www.earthrangers.com Will my risk polar bears have clear hair, so why do they look white? I'm still in school and so many things have already changed. Pluto used to be a planet. The food pyramid used to be valid. And you can't start a sentence with the word but. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.